for Women. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for listening.
What's up?
We're here. We're ready to chat about smart things, probably, hopefully. How's it going?
Pretty good. It is a rainy day here in San Diego, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I did get some steps in earlier this morning on my new walking pad, so that was fun.
Yeah. Do you feel like our chats on the podcast inspired you to do that, or were you already like planning to get a walking pad?
So I have put it off for so long because for me, it's like if I'm going to go walk, I want to go walk in the sunshine and get vitamin D and, walk Lilo and all that stuff. So that's why I put it off. But actually, I bought it for Alex for busy season because it's like a time where, and especially right now too, we do have some rainy seasons in San Diego. So like we have rain for the next week and I'm like, I don't want to walk in that. Like I could, but not fun.
Yeah.
So just kind of pulled the trigger, found one, on Amazon. Bree actually recommended the one. I had her test it out first and then I got it and it's been cool the last few days. But the one thing I want to ask you too, though, you track when you walk, do you track your steps or you just kind of walk and you're like, I'm getting movement?
Generally, I mean, I'm obviously not tracking it super closely because like I'm not tracking my steps when I'm on the walking pad. I'm not tracking all of my steps. Like if I go for like a nice long walk, I'll bring my phone, which is going to track my steps. So I have like a very ballpark gist of how much I walk on a day-to-day basis, but I'm not like super close tracking it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, that's totally fine. You know me, obviously I love data. So like, I'm just any data I can gather, I'm going to get it. But with a walking pad, and this is a tip for any listeners who have a walking pad, when you're walking and you're, on your desk or whatever, like if you're typing away and working, your steps aren't being tracked because you're not moving your hand, right? If you have an Apple Watch or even an Oura Ring, I will say the Oura Ring will pick it up a little bit more because of motion. But what I got, and again, this is another recommendation from Bree, so shout out to her. If you have an Apple Watch or any type of watch, they have like these elastic bands and they're like, I think I got a 10 pack on Amazon for $10. And it just easily like can get bigger. And so then I just like slip this around my ankle and you put it on your ankle and it tracks all your steps because obviously your foot's moving, but when you're typing or when you're working, your arm's not moving. So just a little quick tip for anybody who wants to track their steps and they have a walking pad, get yourself one of these, or you can get like a cheap pedometer on Amazon for like $10 and you just clip it on your shirt or your pants or whatever.
Yeah.
So
I would say like just kind of circling back on somebody who messaged us, sent us an email and was like, so are you trying the walking pad? What do you think? Is it worth it? My feeling is, we can say all day long that it's better to walk outside, and that's true. And we can also say, if you really value being outdoors, you can walk in the rain, you can walk in the snow, you can do all these things. And that's all true. However, it's not going to happen sometimes. And some people are more weather averse than others. And some people just have busy days. And some people spend lots of time at their desk and there's nothing they can really do about that. So if that's the case for you, and it's the difference between I am not going to walk outside today and thus I'm not going to walk, and you have the ability to spend a few $100 on this thing, I think it's a good investment. I don't think it should replace real movement and exercise. And for most people who are keen enough to buy one of these, it's not going to replace real exercise. You're always going to like be outside and walking a lot. I'm always going to try to be outside first and foremost. But I will say the last few weeks that I've had it, when I use it, it's on days that I know I'm not really getting outside, which sucks. And it does improve my mood. And there is something to be said for, like, I'm not power walking on this thing. I'm a fast walker in real life. I'm very it's very New Yorker of me. But when I'm on the thing, I'm not walking quickly because I'm not trying to like get seasick and like knock over my laptop while I'm working. I'm walking very slowly, but even just that little bit of movement in your body, I feel like it helps me concentrate. I'm just like, it's like putting me in a zone to work a little bit better, like a little bit more focused, which I really like. So I think that, again, we are not fans of telling people like, you need this latest supplement or you need this latest tool to be fit. You do not need this, but if you're interested, if you can afford it, if you think it will help you get more movement in, I don't regret spending the money on it.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
Yeah. And there is science, absolutely. We're not just, talking anecdote here, but there's science behind when you're moving and you're getting blood flow, that blood flow to your brain helps you to concentrate better, helps you to kind of give you a little boost there. And so I think I posted this like a few days ago on Instagram. Like if you get that afternoon slump, right, and you're like, oh my God, it's like 3:00, I have a few hours left of work. It's the perfect time to take out the walking pad because, instead of going for that extra cup of coffee, which then maybe keeps you up at night, you're actually doing something that's more productive and getting, and be more productive from a mental standpoint too. So huge win there. And mine, I mean, I don't know, how much was yours? Mine was $150 on Amazon, and it's like super compact. It goes up to 4 miles per hour, which I tested it out, of course. And that's like basically like I'm on like a slight jog on the 4 miles per hour, which I'm not doing, but if I wanted to, I could.
Yeah.
Like I could just, bring it out now and put on 4 miles and start jogging while we're recording. You wouldn't mind, right?
I would not mind, actually. I would enjoy watching that. Mine was more expensive. I didn't get like a top of the line one, but I think everything's more expensive in Canada, even though I ordered it through like Canadian Amazon. But mine ended up being like just under 300 probably. I don't know, something in the mid to, but like if you go on Amazon, you can probably find, depending on where you are, one that's anywhere from like around 150 to like all the way up to like 500, depending on how fancy you want to get. Nice middle of the road probably works fine. And it's not too loud. And anyway.
Yeah, mine's super quiet. We'll link ours.
Yeah.
We can both put our links for the ones that we have, just because I know there's so many out there and people are always asking. So we should do that for sure.
All right, cool. So that's wrapped up. Another experiment that we've been working on that we should talk about, and this relates to one of our sponsors, is some continuous glucose monitoring that the two of us have been playing with over the last couple of weeks. And so let's maybe just debrief. Yep, there's hers. If you're watching this on YouTube, mine is also here. You can see this little lump. It has been annoying, I will say, explaining this to people because all of my friends who are not like health and fitness nerds, every time I see them, they're like, what is happening on your arm? Do you have diabetes? What is going on? And I'm just like, it's an experiment, but I don't want to, rehash it. So let's talk about it here. For anybody who hasn't done this before, I guess this is something you have done before. You've played with CGMs before, right?
Yeah. I actually used NutriSense like when it first came out, when they first got popular a few years ago. I don't remember exactly when. And it was just for experiment purposes. I've had clients ask about it, and clients used it before. So that's, kind of where I was. And then of course, and we could talk a little bit about NutriSense, and our sponsorship with them. But of course we both wanted to kind of try it out and, get some data. And that's really like how I look at it. It's not necessarily, I don't use it to like dictate what exact foods I eat and things like that. I use it to gather data, more so from like a higher point view. I think, and I'll just mention this too, I think some people get a little confused, and they look at like single points in time, and yes, that's like you can look at that and if you're curious, like, oh, I just ate a box of donuts, I want to see what happens, right? But for me, it's kind of looking at it like, oh, I just did a really heavy set of squats to failure. What did my glucose do? And just curious about those things. And then also it's cool with NutriSense, like it shows you your trends over time. So for like a 2-week period, what's like your score or whatever, and like where do you fall within that? And is there anything that, you can start to pay attention to a little bit more? Certain things with like in sleep, right? If your glucose is dipping during sleep, that can affect waking up. And is there things that you can do to kind of combat that? And it's really cool because they have the dietitians, nutritionists on staff that you can literally just message with and ask them questions directly. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So, and just to kind of back up a little bit for people listening, the NutriSense is a resource and an app that allows you to kind of see the blood glucose trends based on the CGM, the continuous glucose monitor that you put onto your arm. So that is like unbranded. You just buy a CGM, or I think you get them through the subscription with NutriSense. But the real sort of value is this app, the subscription-based app that you go on and you can put your workouts in, you can put everything that you eat. And it's a really like sophisticated and easy to use app, which I really liked, because I'm like, again, I kind of am like a little bit over the tracking my food thing. So doing this experiment, I was like, here we go again. I got to put my food in. But like, it's really like, the app is nice. Like, it's not a lot of work. And so, yeah, what it does is it kind of allows you, like Rachel said, to kind of see these trends and see how different things are impacting you. And they also have these nutritionists and experts on, like, within the app that will literally reach out to you and say like, hey, how's it going? Like, I saw this trending thing, or this thing happened a couple of days ago, and here's like a little bit of advice. Like, there's some support there too, so that if you are kind of wondering what's going on, what this information, what this data means, they can help provide you with that. They've got a really extensive sort of blog and website that kind of gives you all the step-by-step information of like, what is a CGM? How do you use it? What is this information? What is this, telling me? How can I use this to my benefit if I want to? So that's really sort of why NutriSense is kind of different. Some of the things that I thought were interesting, because I did this over the last 2 weeks, what I really thought was interesting was how stress can impact your blood glucose response. And also, to your point about the like workout, how exercise can impact your blood glucose, which it just shows again how nuanced and complex health and these biomarkers can be. And I don't want people listening to get like super negative or bogged down with this. Like, maybe look at it more like oh, isn't this interesting? Don't get too freaked out here. But we tend to think of blood glucose spike as bad, right? You ate something, maybe that was like a lot of carbs, or you knew was junk food, your blood glucose spikes, you're like, that's not good, I want to avoid that. I go work out, my blood glucose spikes. That apparently is not a bad thing and is it's a response that your body is doing appropriately to make use of that glucose in your body to help you fuel this workout. So I'm like, okay, so some is bad and some is good, and it's all dependent. It depends on how often. It also depends on how quickly your blood glucose goes back down, and all of these things. But one of my training runs for the 10K that I did, it spiked it up, like redlined me, like it went high. And I was like, I don't like that. So what, exercise is bad now? Like, should I not be working out too hard? But again, it's all about context. Like you said, you get to see sort of trends over time. And did you get 2 CGMs? Yeah. So you can like take this one off. They usually only last about 2 weeks, and you put another one in. Cause I would say like, probably you're going to want a few, if you're going to do this, you're going to want more than 2 weeks of data. And another example was one day I had this protein bar that I like protein bars. We've talked about this. Like, some people are like, all protein bars are disgusting and taste like fake sugar. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm a meathead. Like, I love protein bars. Some are grosser than others, but some, it's a glorified candy bar, but it has 20 grams of protein. It's better than a candy bar. It has 20 grams of protein, right? So anyway, this protein bar that I really like had it. It spiked my blood glucose. And I was like, dude, that sucks. Like, that kind of makes me not want to eat this anymore. Like, I was surprised by that response. And the next day, because I had another one, of course, I had another one, and it didn't do it. It didn't do it. And so I'm thinking, okay, what's going on here? And then I realized that the first day, I kind of had like a stressful day. I had like a lot of work. There was like a lot going on, and I could just feel, because if you're in tune with your body, like that day I was a little bit like jittery, kind of anxious, like sort of on high alert a little bit. My cortisol was probably high. And I'm just assuming I'd have to maybe eat this protein bar 10 days in a row to really know, but I'm assuming that it may have had something to do with how all of that was mixing together. I was already kind of stressed. Maybe I was a little bit more sensitive. And the next day when things were kind of chill, and it also could be the other things I was eating. Maybe I was just higher protein and lower carb that second day, But these are the kind of things that if you like to nerd out, if you like to really dive in and see how your body's reacting to things, you can answer these questions or start to answer these questions if you, like, from a more analytical perspective than just sort of guessing, right? So anyway, it was an interesting experiment.
Yeah, for sure. And that's super. I mean, again, it's like gathering the data, looking at it in the context of your personal life. It's not like, oh, you ate a sweet potato and your blood sugar spiked. Now you should never eat a sweet potato. Like, absolutely no. That's not what we're talking about here. But there was, and I'll just say a quick thing, like, everybody worries about the spikes up, right? They're like, oh, I don't want it to spike too high. But that's not the only thing we're looking at too. Like you mentioned before, it's like, is it dipping too low? And that's something to even think about, like with workouts or like looking at your, paying attention to like your hunger and your cravings and things like that. Like I know one time it was like right before workout, I was just kind of feeling like not amazing, like a little lightheaded. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna like quickly scan and see where I'm at. And like my blood sugar was pretty low. And so I don't know if it was because of, I was also coming off of just being sick for a while. And so like that all had to play into it too. And I was just like curious. So I checked it and it lined up. But then, you know, there's other times when maybe it doesn't. So it's like all just kind of like gathering the data. And I do think, like you said, probably more than 2 weeks, just to kind of see those trends. And again, what's cool about the app is that, I mean, I don't enter my food or anything on the app. I literally just use it to scan and like look at the trends. But there is all of that you can enter in, and it also pulls it like from your, because I have an Apple Watch, so the Apple Health, it'll pull that data in if you did a workout or whatever it may be, which is cool. And then again, just like being able to chat and ask people questions like whenever you have them, I think is cool. So yeah.
Yeah. I completely forgot what I was going to ask you. Oh, did you calibrate your blood glucose? Because it says you can calibrate it. Like it says if you're, you know, testing your stuff or whatever, and something seems off, like if it just seems like your blood sugar's super high or super low and it's not accurate, you can do like a different, like, you know, maybe like a finger prick test or something different to like check and see, basically as like a second opinion. And based on what that gives you, you can kind of like recalibrate. Did you do any of that, or you just kind of went based on?
I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't, because I didn't have anything that was like a red flag over the first few days. But I will say, like, and again, this is what they'll educate you on too, like taking a fingerprint prick blood glucose and your CGM, there's always going to be a slight variance, just because I don't know the exact mechanism, but basically the finger prick result is instant, and the CGM is like a little bit it's like cycled through, basically, if that's the easiest way to say it. So the numbers, like if you are doing this, then if you're like, oh, they're not exactly the same, and you did them within like 5 seconds of each other, it's normal for there to be a little bit of a discrepancy. Right. But again, someone will, you know, explain that to you too as well.
And I think it's like, again, you'd probably only do the calibration if you're getting data that seems really off to you. And it's more just like, do you do the finger prick and is it way off from what the CGM is telling you? Or is it just like a little bit, it's kind of, you know, reiterating what it's already telling you? Anyway, it's all very interesting, but I think how we can kind of close this conversation right now is, now that people know that we're kind of playing with this, send us your questions about CGMs in general, about testing blood sugar, about the NutriSense sort of app, anything you want us to test or experiment with. I will say, on my birthday, I did not check my blood sugar because I ate a ton of donuts. And
I
I
was
just
looking forward to that.
I know. But, you know, there was a part of me that was like, this will be kind of fun. It'll be informational. And I was like, you know what? It's my effing birthday. And I don't want to do this to myself. It would be like weighing yourself on your birthday. I'm like, I don't want to do this. Okay. I already ran a 10K in the snow. I've already worked hard enough. Like, it would have been a mess between the like freezing cold 10K and then a bunch of donuts. Like, my blood sugar was probably all over the place. And I was just like, I don't want anything that's going to like dampen my day at all. So, and I'm an adult, so I don't have to do this. But anyway, so I don't know what the
I would have like
did to
tried to like spike it as high as possible. Just
well,
for
I
fun.
did. I just didn't test
and like
it.
be happy about it, because I'm like, I just ate all these donuts and hell yeah, I just spiked this. But that's not what you do every single day. But like,
it's true.
It's interesting to see. And then of course, like, you know, looking at the next few days after, like, is there anything that came from it or not?
Well,
or did you get right back into it the next day?
That ship is
in terms of like normal. Yeah.
That ship
Well,
has
maybe
sailed.
I'll have to do it.
Yeah, listen, if people write in and say, we want you guys to eat like one meal of something that you love that you think is probably going to be bad and see what happens, we'll do it. But you have to engage with us and tell us what you want, because this is the opportunity. Like, while these guys are giving us this access to their app, and while we're kind of playing around in the experimentation phase, we want to hear what you guys want to know, what you think is worth learning about. So send us your questions and thoughts and comments and whatever you want to musclescienceforwomen@gmail.com. It's the number 4. And just tell us what you want to hear. And in the meantime, if you are interested in NutriSense, I'm sure you've probably heard of it before. If you want to give it a shot, I mean, there's really no harm in doing it. If you like to learn about yourself and your body, you are going to learn some stuff. So you can check it out. And we have a discount for you. The promo code is MSW, of course. And you're going to get $30 off your first month subscription with the app, which includes 2 CGM sensors with free shipping and a month of professional nutritionist support. So that's like a decent little 1 month kind of gift for yourself, right? Yeah. We also have a link you can just go directly to in our show notes. It's nutrisenseio.com/MSW, but that'll be in the show notes. You can just go right from there and sign up if you want. And if you do, we'd love to hear, see what you're experimenting with and see what you're doing. Because again, this is all kind of extra fun stuff. Nobody needs to do this stuff. I mean, some people maybe do need to do it, but the vast majority of us, we just like to learn and experiment, and everything that you get out of this stuff is just sort of more resources to help you be healthier, right? So
yeah. And especially if you are like someone who is maybe pre-diabetic, or like you've had elevated blood sugar, like when you go to your doctor's visits and things like that, then this definitely is something that could give you a lot of insights and for sure help with that. So
yep. And it's cool, like, this has something to do with some of our other sponsors too, but like, it's cool to have these resources that help you sort of take your own health into your own hands, right? Like, we're not saying stop going to a doctor, stop listening to trained professionals, but it's nice to have additional support and additional ways for you to kind of figure things out on your own, because sometimes we don't have the professional resources that we'd like, and sometimes doctors aren't helpful. And so it's nice to just have some of these other kind of avenues for like learning and getting healthier, right?
yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. So sort of on this topic, this is a good segue since we're talking about food and things that may or may not be good for us as individuals. Here is a question that we got in our email from Mary. And she asks, this is actually a good question that we haven't gotten before. I think this could be kind of a cool conversation. I liked it. If I personally don't seem to have an intolerance to a food, such as gluten or conventional dairy, are those foods still inflammatory for me? I've not undergone a period where I cut them out and then reintroduce them. I'm just going based on how I feel when I eat them. So she's saying she has 2% milk in her coffee. She puts cheese in her scrambled eggs, Greek yogurt. She sometimes has whole grain pasta or bread. I mean, a lot of this sounds like my diet too, and I'm in a very similar situation. I also eat a good variety of protein, fruits, and vegetables. If foods are inflammatory and I don't get any physical adverse reactions that I can see when I eat them, how do I know they're inflammatory? Are they inflammatory for everyone or just people who have an intolerance?
Good question.
Good question, Mary. Thoughts?
Yeah. So my thoughts are, I would say that there is and has been a lot of fear mongering around certain types of food being inflammatory. And I think, the simplest response to this question is like, if you are not feeling or seeing or over time have had any adverse effects to these foods, and, again, adverse effects being energy dips, digestion issues, certain things that are showing up, if you've done, and this is another thing, we don't have to go into this, but food sensitivity tests, a lot of those are just complete BS. So that's another thing you want to be very, very careful of. Don't be, getting those food sensitivity tests that you see maybe the ad on your Instagram and, do a quick blood prick sample. Honestly, that's just a waste of your time. There is a gold standard food sensitivity test. I believe it's called the MRT. Do you know that one? MRT test.
I don't know.
we can put some info in the description, but basically that is like the gold standard. And if you do have sensitivity or not sensitivities, if you do have, oh my gosh, what's the other word of sensitivities? I'm having a brain fart. Intolerances, because it's a little bit different. Like sensitivity versus intolerance, there's a little bit of a difference there. But if you have an intolerance towards a certain type of food, like it will potentially show up on that. But again, taking that within context of everything else and knowing how to read that test and all of that is important. But bottom line is, if you are not having any issues, just because you may have heard, maybe on someone's podcast or on a commercial that yogurt or cheese is inflammatory, I would say BS. Because certain foods in my eyes, can't be inflammatory. It's again, how that specific person reacts to that food and their response to that, which may be an inflammatory response. But the food itself is not inflammatory. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I would say I agree with most of what you're saying. And I'm also doing some research, like some specific research recently. So this is very top of mind around food allergies versus sensitivities. And I think it is worth noting because things get so muddled through the context of the media that we're absorbing information. And there is a very big difference between a sensitivity and an allergy. Like we don't talk about this anymore. Like people are all about their sensitivities and I'm sensitive to this and that. And I'm not trying to discount, if you feel like crap and you eat something, don't eat something. It's very clear and very simple. And if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't matter if it's the healthiest food in the world. So respect that. But
Absolutely.
There's a very big difference between when I eat gluten, my digestion's kind of off and I feel kind of icky, versus if someone ingests peanuts and they go into anaphylactic shock. That's the difference between a sensitivity and an allergy. You are not allergic to something unless it is extremely impactful to the point of potentially life-threatening. That's what an allergy is. An insensitive or sensitivity or an intolerance is anything short of that, where you just feel like crap. You break out, whatever, even getting like a rash or something. So actual allergies are much more rare, and most people don't really have that to gluten and dairy, although some people do. The one thing I would say, just to play devil's advocate here a little bit, because again, I agree, like I crush dairy. I've always crushed dairy, and I live in a family of people who are gluten intolerant. So I think just some gene got passed along and I got lucky. And I think there are a lot of people out there who are just fine with gluten. I actually also find, the only impact I have for gluten personally is if I'm just eating a ton of things that have gluten, I might gain some weight because I'm eating a lot of carbs. It doesn't impact my digestion or anything like that. It's just like, if I'm eating bread all the time, I might get a little fluffy. But I actually find that a lot of gluten-free mixes impact my digestion more negatively than if I just ate the gluten, really. And I think there's a lot of people who are like that. So these are things that are worth noting. But the one thing I'll say to Mary is, if you eat these things and you're fine, eat them and be fine and enjoy your dairy and your gluten. But you did say that you have never tested this theory by taking them out of your diet. So the one thing I would say is, if you are interested in this, you obviously have some interest because you reached out and asked us the question. Some people don't know how something's impacting them until they cut it out. So you may think you feel great, and maybe you do, but if you cut both of these things out for a month and suddenly somehow you feel like you've dropped a pant size and your energy's even better and maybe your sleep is even better, like maybe you don't know unless you've tried it. So I see no harm in cutting these things out if you want to, as a little personal experiment for a month. Just cut it all completely out, and then maybe you add just the one thing in, just the dairy for a bit, see how it goes. If that's all great, maybe add the gluten back in, see how it goes. And chances are you're going to feel great both ways. And then but you don't know unless you try, right? So it's always worth kind of playing with these things, I think.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more, I think. And that's what I was having a brain fart on, between sensitivities versus allergies. That's what I was. Thank you. You cleared it up for everybody. But yeah, I totally agree. And then there's also just the, thinking about even things like eggs, for example. Like, people can develop sensitivities if they are eating a certain food in a high quantity daily, right? And so that's just because if you kind of think about it, like if you're doing something constantly, or there are some of these certain foods that maybe have more propensity to cause, if you're eating a lot of them every single day and they have some, what's the word? Oh my gosh, why am I brain farting so much today? They have some compounds, I guess you could say, in them that potentially could stir up a bit more versus like something else, then maybe that's something to pay attention to too. So it's not only just like dairy, gluten, there are some other foods that you could develop maybe some sensitivities to, and you're having some issues like bloating or digestion, and you're trying to figure out what it is. Think about like, oh, do I eat this thing every single day for, months on end, years on end? Don't switch it up. That could be something. But again, like I eat yogurt and cottage cheese every single morning for breakfast for the last year, and I don't have any issues with that. And I have tested taking them out for periods of time too, and personally didn't notice like any difference there. But I have also tested taking eggs out, and for certain periods of time, I have actually noticed a little bit of difference in terms of bloating and like some gas and things. But then later on, bringing it back in and not having those things too. So it's also can be like, last year your digestion and even like bacteria in your gut can be completely different than what it is this year or over time, and that changes too. So don't just like, put something out and be like, oh, I can never have dairy again, or I can never have gluten again. Things change. So be experimental and test and assess over time is what I would say.
I live in constant fear that I will develop a sensitivity to eggs, because eggs are my life. Like the eggs are the perfect food. I eat them every single morning for breakfast, sometimes later in the day too. And they're just so perfect and they're so delicious, and I never get tired of them. And I really am afraid that someday my body's going to be like, enough with the eggs already. And I'm going to be really, really sad about it. But I'm sure I'll figure it out if that happens, but hopefully not.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, so we're at about, our time. Do you want to ask, do you want to do one more question, or do you want to wait till next time?
Why don't we save it?
Okay, let's save it.
Get people coming back.
Leave them wanting more. Hey.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, great. Right. Well, that's awesome. Great chatting with you.
Awesome.
Catch you on the flip side.
Don't do stupid shit. Oh, wait. Do you like my new sticker?
I noticed that in your Instagram stories the other day. You got to send me a sticker so I can put it on one of my new stainless steel shaker cups that I got. Did you see that the other day? Because I'm starting to get rid of plastic crap. We'll put links to like all of this stuff in the in the show notes.
I bought this water bottle. It's like one of the the hydro flasks, but it's a knockoff. It was $12 for a 40-ounce stainless steel on Amazon.
Have you been following this like Stanley Cup chaos mess? Like,
I've never getting a Stanley Cup.
Ever. Even if I ever wanted one, which I never did, I would definitely, no offense, guaranteed, like the laws of averages say that a bunch of people listening to this have a Stanley Cup. Good for you if you like it. But like, holy moly, guys. Like,
nothing against you.
We're $50 on a cup that people are like fighting over in Target and stuff. Like, it's just wild. Like, you can buy a stainless steel drinking vessel for much cheaper anywhere else. Okay. All right. No offense, cool. Stanley, guys. All right. Just had to get that out of our system. Don't be insane. Don't do stupid shit. Don't buy a Stanley Cup. See you later.